Hi, and welcome to another weekly wrap up. My name is Amanda, and we're going to just jump right in. I have had such a fun reading week, and so I actually have some physical books in my possession, which I don't have very often, and so I just want to get into it. So, first of all, the first book that I finished last week was The Summer Tree by Guy Gavriel Kay. I was almost done with this when I filmed my last wrap up, and I finished it. I don't know how I felt about it. I am going to go into a more in-depth wrap up about it in my fantasy 100 best fantasy series, so that's coming up. It was okay. The ending was ridiculous and awful and just too much. But the rest of it, I kind of liked it. So anyway, I'll talk about that then. Then I had a few that were either ebook or on audio. The first one is an ebook short story collection called Nocturne by H.B. Diaz. So this I read because Steve from Steve Talks Books picked this for his birthday read. His birthday's in January, and so I read it in January, and I'd finished it before February 1st. I think I finished it on the 31st of January, but I got it done and I finished it, and I loved it so much. Like, I was so surprised. First of all, I was surprised because HB Diaz is a woman, and I read the whole thing before I knew that, and I would never have guessed that the writer of this short story compilation was a woman. But anyway, that was just a pleasant surprise for me. But these stories were so good. Some of them were really short and just a couple of pages long, and some of them were what you would consider to be short story length. I really enjoyed it. And if you like horror short stories or you're trying to get into horror short stories, I definitely recommend you picking up Nocturne by H.B. Diaz. It was so good. Then I read on audio, I listened to Green Rider by Kristen Britton. This was one of those FOMO situations. So technically, when I finished Nocturne, I was done with my TBR for January. Technically, I was done with my audio part of my TBR like on the 26th or 27th of January. And I thought, I'll just get started on a few of my February books because it's not like I'm reading those for any kind of readathon or any kind of thing that I can't start until February 1st. So I was like, I'll read those. And then people were talking about Green Rider. This is Fine from Fine Reads. One of her favorite books, or one of her favorite series. And so I was like, I'm not going to read it. Like, I really don't have time to jump into another series. So I'm just going to let this go. Like, I don't have to do everything. I don't have to participate in everything. And then I'm sitting there at the end of the month and I'm like, I could easily read Green Rider before the beginning of February. So I did. I'm glad that I did. It feels like, to me, an extension of Tamara Pierce. So, like, I'm reading through all of Tamara Pierce's catalogs, and Green Rider just seems like it fits in there so well. Like, I feel like what happens in Green Rider could totally take place in Tortall, the world that Tamara Pierce has created. And so, to me, it really felt like just a continuation. It's also one of those accidental hero kind of stories that I absolutely love. It's like we're meeting Kerrigan as she has been kicked out of school and she's on her way walking home from this school that she's been kicked out of. And along the way, she literally runs into a guy who is currently dying, and he kind of passes on his message and he wants her to continue to take that message to the king. And so it just goes from there. She accidentally becomes a Green Rider, and she keeps saying, like, I'm not a Green Rider. That's not who I am. I just happen to continue this message, And anyway, she discovers a lot more about herself, and I love her relationship that she has with her father. I think that is something that we don't see a lot of in these fantasy books, specifically the female protagonist fantasy books. They don't usually even talk about their fathers, or if they do, they're like absentee fathers, all the way to like abusive. But this one, she has a really good relationship with her dad, and I really, really liked it. So now I'm reading another series. Anyway, speaking of Tamara Pierce, the next thing that I finished was Lady Night. This is the final book in the 4-book series about Kell, Lady Kell, and now she is officially a knight, and she gets her own. I loved this so much. She is assigned her own, it's not necessarily a keep, but it is a piece of land, castle thing, and they're in the middle of a war still. Like, Tortall is still at war, but she is given this to protect the people that are already there, which is a group of convicts that they have brought out to, like, help restore the place and build it back up after it was destroyed. And so she goes there like, I don't know how this is going to work. I'm brand new as a knight. Like, I shouldn't be taking over this thing and doing this. But it's because the people who know her and the people who put her in charge actually see what she has done and what she does well, and they use it accordingly. So I'm going to go into that a little bit more in the Tamara Pierce specific video that will be coming out, but I really liked the end of that series. Now, my favorite book of the week, my favorite book of the year so far, I know that's not saying a lot, it's only February, but it's Lily from Daniel Barnett. I know that y'all can not see all of these tabs. You can kind of get an idea about them, but I use one of these things, and I used all of the orange that had the arrows, and I had to move to the flat orange. So I don't know how many are in here, but I just decided to do orange for this book. I don't know why. I just liked the way it looked, and I really like this. Like, I've never been a person who tabbed or took notes or did any of that stuff, but I loved this. And last night, I finished this book last night, and I sat down and went back to every one of these tabs, and I just read like what I had highlighted. And this one right here just happens to be one of my favorite quotes. And it says, "All the best stories have hope, Marcos, and don't listen to anyone who tries to tell you otherwise." This book is I feel like, a discussion of hope. Like, in different forms, whether it is hopeful or hopeless or whatever is going on at that time. I feel like this is an exploration of hope and what it looks like to move forward in grief and purpose, just one step and one obstacle at a time, going to where you need to be. It was so good. We just had the discussion with Daniel about this on Steve Talks Books channel yesterday. It'll technically be tomorrow for me, but yesterday when you watch this video, when this video goes out. So I am sure that discussion is going to be great. So go over to Steve's channel, Steve Talks Books, if you have read Lily. If you haven't, don't go over there because there's nothing but spoilers happening. So that was my favorite. I don't know what I'm going to do with it to like preserve it. I actually took a picture of the tabs last night when I finished it, and I sent it to Daniel, and I was like, I love this book. Like, the wording that he uses is just perfection. Like the sentence structure even. And this is the longest book in the series. Okay, if you don't know anything about the series, first of all, the sun falls from the sky in the very beginning of book 1. And this is 6 books later. And we are following the people who are left and the people who are figuring out what this new nightmare land means and how they can bring back the sun. So good. This is the only series that has at least 6 books that I have given every book 5 stars. And even now that I'm finished with the series, or I'm caught up with the series, and I go back and think about books 1 and 2, like, would I change that? Absolutely not. Like, no, I would not change those 5 stars. It's fantastic. Okay. enough about that. I'm going to stop gushing about that. Let's talk about what I'm still reading. So I am still reading Demon Theory by Stephen Graham Jones. This came from the library, and I am a third of the way through. I'm going to call it a third of the way because this is technically a trilogy. Okay. This is so creative, but at the same time, so confusing to talk about. So this is a movie written down. Technically, it's 3 movies because it's a trilogy, and I am at the beginning of the second movie. And what it does, like, I don't even know how to exactly explain it. Like, it'll say things. Let me see if I can find one where we're talking about that. Okay, so we have this break. You can see where the line break is. So it's like Virginia's sliding awake into Egan and then it cuts, and you go to a sudden vantage point behind the SUV, the cattle guard, and they come across, okay, blurring into the FG, which means foreground, as what's beyond settles on the house looming over them. So there's all kind of things that's like in her background. Like this is what you can see in the background, and you see this person coming over the top. And every time there's a new character introduced, which I don't see one on this page, but it's written in all caps, like a new character, a new person on screen. So sometimes it just says like figure standing there because we don't know who they are. And so this is just written like a book. I mean, it's a movie that somebody wrote down. So I don't know. I've never read anything like it. His last Final Girl book was a lot like that. Like it was the same thing where you saw the point of view, but there just wasn't. Number one, I didn't feel like there were as many characters, and I didn't think that one was as well done as this one is. This one is so good. I'm loving it so far. So that's what I'm still reading. I'm also still reading Waking Ursa Minor by Helen Rye Peterson. This book is like an epic fantasy, and I will talk more about it, I'm sure, when I finish. I am over halfway at this point, and like I said earlier last week, I'm just taking it one chapter at a time, one chapter a day. So I'm not trying to like sit down and read it all the way through. I want to really be able to absorb what I'm reading, and so I'm taking it in smaller chunks, which is the same thing that I'm doing with The Dragon Reborn that I'm reading with Andrew from Get Right On In. We're still reading that. We're just going slow. So one more thing. One more that I'm currently reading is City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. This is another one. You can see where my bookmark is. I'm literally just taking one chapter a day, and that's it. Working my way slowly through, and that is the plan as far as continuing in that way. So there are a couple of other things that I'm currently reading, but there's no reason to discuss those. We'll talk about them more when I finish reading. How about what's coming up? So I do have another library book in person, Closer to Nowhere by Ellen Hopkins. This one is on my February TBR for a poetry book. So this is a book in verse. You can see how it's written. Yeah, there you go. You can see the way that it is written, and I have it tabbed already for what I'm going to be reading each day to finish this in like 6 days. So that I will be starting and maybe finishing before I film next week's wrap up. I'm not sure. I'm also going to be starting Rabbits for Food, which was one of my NPR picks for 2019 in the eye-opening reads. I've got another J.D. Robb book coming up, and hopefully I will be getting pretty far into Tigana by Guy Gabriel Kay. So I just read this one by GGK, and this one is the beginning of the Fionavar tapestry. Fionavar, I think. But the other one, Tigana, is a standalone, and everybody says that it's so much better, and I am really looking forward to that. I liked his writing, and I liked his creativity in this book, so hopefully I will like Tigana. I'm really excited about it. And I think that's it. If I have more time next week, I will get to the 2020 eye-opening read for NPR, which is called MS-13. So those are my plans. I forgot that I just finished one other book today because it's for my in-person book club. And so I forget a lot to include it because it's not one that I normally put on my TBR because we don't read them in month chunks. We just read them a few chapters as we're going along and kind of just stay together as we read the book. So anyway, it's called A Place So Wicked. I did not enjoy the end of this. I thought this was an okay book for the majority of it. I probably would have given it 4 stars had it continued the way it was going. But the end, just it was rushed and it was not fully fleshed out. I guess that's what rushed means. And I didn't like the explanations that we were given for what happened at the end. The premise of it was really cool, and I thought it was going to end up being a really cool story, but it just did not work for me at the end. And so we are now moving into a historical fiction book called The Orphanage. I'll put a picture. I can't remember everything about it, but this one we will be starting probably in the next week, and we won't finish for a while because it has like 50 something chapters and we just slowly go through it. So I'm sure it'll be a while before we finish that one, but that is it. That's everything for what I finished, what I'm currently reading, and what is coming up that I'm going to be reading. So let me know something that you finished this week that you liked or didn't like, and maybe what you're planning on reading next. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.